When we think about the Third Reich, we usually think of a regime obsessed with physical purity, with this idea of a perfect Aryan race. But what if I told you their entire war machine wasn't just running on ideology, but on, well, a whole lot of drugs? Today, we're diving into the pretty wild, untold story of the drugged-up Reich.
Right, this is a central paradox, isn't it? On one hand, you have this state that officially called drug users criminally insane. But on the other hand, you have a military that was systematically getting its soldiers high. So how do you square that? Let's get into it.
You know, the hypocrisy really starts at the top with this myth they built. The public image of the Nazi leadership, and especially Hitler, was all about extreme self-discipline. He was sold to the public as this health saint, a guy who wouldn't even drink coffee, let alone anything stronger. This was a huge part of the Führer cult, this idea that he was this pure being, sacrificing everything for Germany.
And this is where that myth just completely shatters. Look at the difference. Publicly, they're running a war on drugs, throwing addicts in concentration camps. But behind the scenes, the military is issuing a wakefulness pill decree, ordering 35 million tablets of methamphetamine for its troops. It wasn't just a double standard, it was pharmacology as a weapon of war.
And that weapon of war had a very specific target. It was the chemical rocket fuel for one of the most famous military tactics in history, the Blitzkrieg, the Lightning War.
So the drug at the heart of all this was called Pervitin. It hit the market in the late 1930s and, it became an instant hit. But here's the wild part. Nobody saw it as an illegal drug. It was marketed like an energy drink or a strong cup of coffee is today. A little pick-me-up to fight fatigue. You could walk into a pharmacy and buy it, no prescription. They even put it in chocolates.
And just to give you an idea of the scale we're talking about, for the invasion of France in 1940, the German military ordered 35 million doses. This wasn't a few soldiers popping pills to stay awake. No, this was a core part of their invasion strategy.
So, what did that actually look like on the ground? Well, the whole plan for invading France depended on incredible speed. Going through the Ardennes forest, which everyone thought was impossible, Pervitin made the impossible possible. Tank crews were driving for 3, sometimes 4 days straight without sleep. They were covering insane distances, completely overwhelming the Allied forces. The drug basically turned off their fear, cranked up their aggression, and chemically engineered them to be the perfect soldiers for a lightning war.
And this wasn't just a top-down thing. The soldiers themselves got hooked. This letter here is from a young soldier named Heinrich Boll, who, believe it or not, would go on to win the Nobel Prize in Literature. He's literally writing home, begging his parents to mail him more Pervitin. He says it's the only way he can fight what he calls the great enemy, sleep.
But the story doesn't stop with the soldiers on the front line. Oh no, the use of these powerful drugs went all the way to the very top. Let's talk about the Führer himself.
Okay, so meet patient A. That's the code name Hitler's personal doctor, a man named Theodor Morell used for him in his private medical records. And those records, they showed that the whole pure, teetotaling leader thing was a complete and utter lie. Morell was the shady doctor known for his miracle injections, and he quickly became one of Hitler's closest ever confidants.
And his descent into addiction was, well, it was terrifyingly fast. It starts in 41 with animal hormones and other strong meds. By 1943, Morell is giving him daily shots of Eucodol, that's basically a cousin of heroin, just to keep him in a state of euphoria. Then, after the assassination attempt in 44, they add high-grade cocaine to the daily cocktail. But here's the kicker. In late 1944, Allied bombs destroy the factories making his drugs. Suddenly, his supply is cut off.
Which brings us to those last days in the bunker. You've probably heard the descriptions of him as this shaking, paranoid wreck. For years, that's been blamed on Parkinson's disease. But more and more, research suggests that what people were actually witnessing were the brutal classic symptoms of severe withdrawal from opiates and cocaine. Just imagine, you're losing a world war and you're going cold turkey from hard drugs at the same time.
So let's peel back the layers a bit and look at the science here. What exactly were these substances, and just how potent were they, really?
So what makes meth? Well, meth. The power of Pervitin is all in its chemistry. It's methamphetamine, not just plain amphetamine. That one extra little bit, a methyl group, basically acts like a skeleton key. It lets the molecule slip across the blood-brain barrier way faster, which gives you a much more intense and a much more addictive high.
Now we need some context on the dosage because this is super important. A German soldier was taking maybe 9 to 15 milligrams a day.
If you look at the chart, that's actually in the same neighborhood as a modern prescription for Adderall, but it is worlds away from the 300 to 800 milligrams a modern street user might take. So yes, it was performance-enhancing, for sure, but it's not quite the level of abuse we might imagine today.
As the war started to go south for Germany, the desperation just skyrocketed, and so did the drugs. Nazi scientists were ordered to create a new miracle drug. The result was something called DIX, and it was a nightmare cocktail in a single pill. You had oxycodone and opiate for the euphoria, cocaine for the confidence boost, and methamphetamine to keep you from sleeping.
And the way they tested DICE, it just shows the complete moral collapse of the regime. They used prisoners from the Sachsenhausen concentration camp. They were forced to carry heavy packs and march on a track for up to 60 miles a day without rest until they literally just collapsed. It was human experimentation at its most horrific.
The Nazis were basically running a massive, uncontrolled drug trial in real time. So what has modern science taught us since then about what these stimulants actually do?
Well, we now know the risks are incredibly serious. Modern studies show that amphetamines, like Adderall, carry a significantly higher risk of causing psychosis than other stimulants. This data basically gives a scientific name to what the soldiers on the front called Pervitin fever, these terrifying episodes of paranoia and full-blown psychosis from taking the drug for days on end.
And the damage isn't just in the short term. Chronic meth use is what we call neurotoxic. It physically damages your brain. It messes with your dopamine systems and can cause lasting problems with memory, learning, and even motor control. So the very drug the Nazis thought was making them superhuman was actually causing permanent harm.
But, and this is a really crucial point, this was not just a Nazi thing. The Allies were doing it too. General Eisenhower ordered 500,000 tablets of Benzedrine, that's an amphetamine, for American GIs. British bomber pilots used wakey-wakey pills to stay alert on long flights. The chemically enhanced soldier was, in many ways, a feature of the Second World War, period.
So that leaves us with this massive question. We always hear the story of World War II as a clash of ideologies, of technology, of human will. But what happens when you add pharmacology to that list? How does it change our understanding of victory, of defeat, of human endurance itself, when you know that so many people on both sides were being propped up by powerful drugs? It kind of reframes the entire conflict, doesn't it?